Shall we begin?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the More Than Just Keto podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Molly.
Hello, friends, and I'm your other host, Ashley. This is part 2 of our mental health episode, and we finished the last episode with talking about our childhood, just a little bit of our childhood to kind of the root of the anxiety or the episode that led to that realization that anxiety was clearly present in our lives and that there were some issues going on. So I finished my story with having my children and really started yo-yo dieting pretty hardcore, right? And getting to a place where I was not only backsliding, but I was going yo-yo dieting in and out and then gaining like 10 more pounds every time I went in and out.
Yeah.
So we would set a date for a vacation or an event or whatever. And I would basically starve, work out, eat brown rice and broccoli and chicken. And then I would do that for like 3 months. I'd lose like 30 pounds. I'd go on vacation. I would eat everything and anything. And then I would come back and I would gain like an extra 10 pounds. So I'd like lose the 30 and then I'd be at 40.
Yeah.
And so I did this over and over and over again for quite a while, like a couple of years, until 2019. And at that point, I was at my heaviest weight and I was 100 pounds over what I am now. And I was so miserable so miserable in my body, emotionally. I think I was really understanding that I had postpartum depression, and I was really starting to realize like how kind of sad that was. And my son did not sleep well. And there was just a lot of elements, right, to me not feeling like myself and kind of coming out of this depression that I had been in. And I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, what have we done? Like, what have we done here? And just disgusted with the choices that I made, the way I handled the situations that I was put in. I was riddled with guilt over, if my children were going to be affected by my choices or how I was feeling about myself and, just everything, right? So just massive amounts of guilt, anxiety off of just out of control. And I finally got to a point where I was so uncomfortable that I was like, all right, my mom had been doing keto, and I have shared this story, so I'm going to skip kind of through it. But, my mom was doing keto. She's the one that introduced me. I kind of gave myself that final, okay, it's this, or you are getting gastric bypass. That is happening. I had a friend who did it. She had amazing results. And I was like, that's what you're going to do. And she's like, yes, come on, we can do this together. And I'm like, I need to do this because I can't figure out how to do this on my own. And keto was my last stop.
Yeah.
And I literally started keto, and it's like my body was like, yes, girl, finally figuring this out. Right. And so I finally, for the first time, was getting momentum. And as I started losing weight and eating clean, because I did really clean keto for a while, like really strict keto, I started like that fog of my choices, my behaviors, my thoughts was starting to lift. And I was starting to see that this had so much more of a positive effect than just my body.
Yeah.
I had a moment where I had lost like 50 pounds and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not just changing like my body, but like something else is going on. Like I have new feelings, and it's like, if you ever planted a seed and that first little sprout that comes up and you're like, oh, I'm doing this. It's so exciting. Like I'm growing this thing. That's what it was like. Those were the feelings. I was like, look at you. The feeling of accomplishment, the feeling of, and I'll admit too, like that control of being able to do something, but also the fulfillment of finding something that I was loving.
Yeah.
And I started loving the way I was able to move, and I couldn't move before. And I was starting to love the way I could exercise that I couldn't do before. And I was starting to watch myself become stronger and faster and healthier. And I was feeling it physically and mentally. And it started making me reflect. on my choices and my behaviors and all the things that led me up into this point. And why have I done this to myself? And really digging into the story that I told before in my past and what's happened to me and the trauma. It started to make me find other areas of my life that I could apply the same rules as I did to keto, which is, figure out what works for you and do something you love and find a way to make that affect all parts of your life. And that may seem crazy that food can lift a fog from you, but our food is so responsible. And I've learned this now for how we're feeling, our gut health and our mental health. All of that is an ecosystem and it all feeds off of each other. And I really started researching the sugar, researching addiction to sugar and carbohydrates, and understanding the processes that we were eliminating in our bodies and how it was creating clearer thinking and how we were changing as people because we were changing our food. And that was a really eye-opening moment for me. And I felt like, man, I am just like this new person. And look at all the growth I've done. And I have come so far. And then 2020 December smacked me right in the face. Right in the face. Yeah. And I know most people will have a story about 2020. And mine is that I did get COVID, and I shared this on the pandemic episode of what happened. And for the first time in 11 years, all of my feelings that I had from when my dad was hurt, all of it came back. It was overwhelming. And I know, because you watched me sit through all of that. I was crying on most podcasts. I was like, before we would record, I would tell you how I was doing. Yeah. I was crying myself to sleep. Yeah. I was slowly slipping into a very dangerous, deep depression, and I was trying to cover it up. I was telling myself that my anxiety wasn't that bad, that I remember having conversations with Molly about, I have, she's like, well, thought about talking to someone, or, she's like, I'm on medication, this is the conversation that we're having. And I'm like, I need that anxiety. That anxiety is what makes me get through the day. If I don't have it, I cannot be a productive human being. You don't understand.
You truly.
She did understand. Spoiler alert. If you don't know by now, she fully understand, but she knew I wasn't ready. Right. No, I wasn't ready to do anything about it yet. Because the funny thing about anxiety and depression is it has to get so bad, just like any other person going through addiction or any other thing. You got to get to a point where you're so sick of your own self. Yeah. And I should have known that, because it's the same pattern as when I started keto. And you would think, Ashley, you've done all this growth work. Hello. But that's not how depression works. Yeah. Right? It takes your focus from, even though I was doing keto and doing all these things, and thank God, I knew, I was aware enough to know the food is the only thing that you really can control right now. And keto is the only thing you have. If you let that go, you will have nothing. Right? So I clung to that very, very hard, and it did get me through. It was a way that I coped with my situation. I threw myself into my diet, into my work. I allowed my anxiety to fuel all of those things. The gym, I let it be an excuse for why I was behaving the way I was, and that I was not going to get help because I needed to be this way. And that's really what I was doing. And as it progressed, in the beginning, I didn't know I wasn't going to get my smell and taste back, really, but I had a gut feeling when it first happened. And I explained that on that podcast. Yeah, I know. And when I get that feeling, it's a very specific feeling. Nobody can talk me out of it, because I know. And I've never been wrong.
Right. No, you're always right.
I've never been wrong when I get, it's the same feeling that I had when my dad got hurt. I know. I don't know how I know. Everybody's like, you're crazy. My intuition, there's just this marked feeling, and I knew it. I knew it was over. Everybody's like, you're overreacting. So that also, people saying that, I needed to, you'll get it back. It'll be fine. You're going to be fine. Oh, I bet you're going to lose a bunch of weight.
Wait,
yeah.
What?
Everybody's like, oh, you'll lose weight because you can't taste anything. I'm like, that's not what I want. I want to taste my food. It's a part of life. Like, and we get to eat the most tasty, wonderful food. And I just slowly stopped talking about it and I wouldn't share with anyone because people couldn't understand. And so what happens is, and this is what happened to me, when you don't feel understood, you tend to pull away and you don't want to share that. Your depression gets worse and your anxiety gets worse. And then your anxiety and your depression tell you, nobody's going to understand. Why would you tell anybody? Don't even try to make people understand because they just think you're sad. Those are the kind of voices that you have in your head about nobody understands. So I shouldn't even talk about it because what's the point? It just makes me sad to talk about it. So I just started slowly shutting down. That's really, really what happened. Until once again, there's always an event because you can only hide this and cover it up for so long. Seriously, it always has an edge point that you get pushed over. Always. There's always an end point to this. So I'm seeing my doctor. I don't realize at this time that I'm so bad off, but I am pretty much suicidal. Looking back, I don't even think I really understood that, which is what's so scary. I was crying myself to sleep at night, and I was thinking things like, I'll never be able to like make new recipes and taste them and like give my family things. I will never, like, my children are going to suffer. My husband, why would he even want to be with me? Those dark
Remember
things.
you were said I couldn't smell my son's heads.
Yeah,
Remember that?
my
That was
children
like,
out of the bath. I
and then if
lost
there
that.
was a fire, or
There was a
smoke, you couldn't
fire. I
smell it.
wouldn't,
It was so,
it was devastating. And I was like, what's the point of living? Obviously, this is where the most average person would be like, oh, there's so much more to live for. But in that
when you're
moment,
in that,
when you're in that dark place, you don't feel like living. And one night I cried myself to sleep. My husband came in. I could not stop crying. It was hours and I was in agony. My whole body hurt from just literally sobbing myself to sleep. So I finally get out. My doctor follows back up. I had to wait a certain amount of time that had passed 2 months before I could be seen for long COVID or the long haulers. And now I was considered that. So I went to my doctor, I got an ENT, and this is really where everything changed for me. I showed up to the ENT and she basically said, there's nothing that we can do for you. You're probably never going to get it back. I have patients that have never gotten it back, that have gotten the flu or had a brain injury. And we just don't see these patients recover.
hope.
And I'm sitting in there and I'm trying not to make eye contact with her. And I'm like, I understand. And she's like, well, we could just give you like a referral to VCU, which is like a medical institute. And, they're the cutting edge of technology. Like, they are the ones that are going to solve this if they solve it. And basically, you can be a test dummy. And so I'm like, okay, that's fine. And I could not get out of that room fast enough. I was holding my breath again, which should have been the indication.
It reminds me of your dad going to the special, and then you
same thing, right?
and
I walk out of the doors,
eye contact,
and I get in the car, and I'm crying hard, but I'm like breathing. And I talk to my husband, and I'm telling him, he's like, I don't believe this. Like, we can get a second opinion. I'm like, no, I told you, I've known this.
Yeah.
So I make it all the way to work, and I call my mom.
Yeah.
And I'm on the phone with my mom, and I pull up to work, and I put my car in park. And she's like, well, what happened? What did they say? And I'm explaining the story. And I'm like, I'm saying the words, they said these patients never recover. And I'm crying.
Yeah.
And I must have been holding my breath, or I was just hyperventilating at that point from crying so hard. I don't really know.
Yeah.
And I just remember everything starting to tingle, pins and needles all over my face. I immediately go flush. My hands, pins and needles, my feet, pins and needles. I felt like I was electric. I felt like I was wired, like I was plugged into something. It was a vibration. And then I have her on the phone, and I can kind of hear her in the background. And I just remember,
it's like
everything is just starting to kind of dim out, and the tunnel vision is getting to the point. And I'm like, in that moment, I said to myself, I said out loud to her, I'm going to pass out.
Oh God.
I'm okay. It's okay. And I accepted it. I was like, in my mind, I'm like, this is it for me. in that moment, I was like, I don't even care. Just, yeah. And I remember hearing my mom on the phone and she's like, Ashley, count. She's being her nurse, her ICU motherhood is kicked in. And she's like,
Yeah.
you listen to me, take a breath. And so she's like, get off the phone with me right now and you call your doctor. My mom is the reason that my story changes because I listen to her. And I hang up the phone and I call my doctor and I am barely able to speak. I am trembling. I am covered in snot. I am crying. And I'm like, I just had a panic attack and I really need to talk to my doctor. And do you know she's scheduled a Zoom call for me the next day and I was going out of town.
Yeah.
And I got on that Zoom call and I told her that I was very scared about how dark and deep and sad and how much anxiety I was having. My brain just never shut off.
Yeah, you at nighttime, you were having
I was
nighttime.
up all night Googling.
Yeah.
I was up. I mean, I worried about everything. And she said, and I said, and I am having a hard time because I feel like I am failing by asking for help. And she said, she looked at me and she said, medication does not mean you failed. Medication is like someone holding your hand, sticking their hand out for you. You grab their hand and they help you to the other side. That's what this is. It's a helping hand. It is not going to fix you and it is not going to change you, but it is going to give you a bridge so that you can walk over your feelings because right now you cannot wade through this. It is bigger than you.
Yes.
And
Great
right now
doctor.
you have got to stop feeling some of it. It's too much. And I just remember crying and saying, okay. And she called in prescriptions for me to be picked up when I got home. And it was the first time in my life that I actually asked for help, like for real, for real.
So huge, huh?
And it was not long after that, a few weeks, I would say, wouldn't you say? Because you were with me on this ride.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It was a few weeks and I started realizing, and this is the comparison that I give to people. And if you have anxiety, you will immediately understand what I'm saying. And if you understand what I'm saying, if you don't like the way it feels, then you need to figure out what you need to do, if it's medication or if it's something else, but you are worth and you deserve this peace.
Yeah.
Living with anxiety, even high functioning and depression at the same time, right? The depression can take over or the anxiety can take over. So sometimes you don't know where that sliding scale is. Sometimes anxiety is the one that's ruling your life. And then something happens when the depression gets so bad, it actually takes over the anxiety.
Yeah.
And the depression becomes the scary thing because it's slow and because you've always kind of had anxiety and people kind of know maybe this is kind of how you operate.
Yeah.
This is how people that we love leave this world and we don't understand why. That depression creeps in slowly and it takes over the anxiety. So the person doesn't seem that much different. And we hide that depression a lot of times. And we're trying to use our anxiety to cover up our depression. And eventually the depression swallows us whole.
Because the depression is
it becomes larger. It's hopeless. It is the feeling of the anxiety and depression that I had was absolutely no hope. It is the best way to describe absolutely hopeless. And that's the place that I was in. Before I started that medication, it was like trying to study, right, for an exam in a bar. Okay. All of that noise. Can you imagine? You go to a bar and it's like super loud. It's packed wall to wall with people and there's drinks going everywhere. There's just so much going on. Maybe there's a fight over in the corner and your intention just cannot possibly be on what you need. You're reading the same thing over and over again. There's just so much going on, right? Being on anxiety medication is like all of that disappears and you're in a library. Because that bar is the symbolism of what your brain is doing to you while you're trying to live your life.
Chaos.
Absolute chaos.
Distraction.
So many distractions and so worked up and just agitated easily and just so many negative feelings. That medication did not take all of my anxiety away.
Right.
That's not how this works.
Right.
But it dims that noise to being somebody over in the corner that walks in and shuts the door. Somebody grabs a book and you can hear it. It turns into normal things and practices that humans have in a library. And it's not completely void of noise, but It's quiet.
Yeah.
It's mostly
You
quiet.
can think.
And you can think and you can focus.
Study. Yeah.
And that's what happens. So then that anxiety or interruption of your thoughts doesn't take over anymore. And you're able to say, yes, that's happening, but I can't do anything about that right now. So I have to not think about that.
Yeah.
And this is what's in front of me. And this is what's important. And this is what I must focus on. It is the most freeing thing I have ever experienced in my life. And although I cannot find any reason why this long-term situation has happened to me, the one thing that I can find out of this is that I should have been on this medication a long time ago. And if this is the lesson that I had to learn, and perhaps, the series of events that had to unfold for me to really do the work. I said I was doing the work, and I did do work. But I wasn't doing all the work. I was skipping around some of the things, and I said I had dealt with my traumas. But the thing about anxiety and depression and trauma is that it always comes back. And in my mind, I thought I dealt with that. It's over. But the thing is, this is going to keep happening because this is life, and life keeps happening.
Yeah.
So I am now much more prepared to deal when it happens again.
Right.
Instead of saying, oh, that happened to me a long time ago, and I've dealt with that. Nay, I have realized that is very naive, and that this will continue to happen. And I will grieve and be traumatized more times because that's kind of a part of life. And keto, in a weird way, is what kept me, at least my head above enough to see. And then obviously being in my community and sharing my truths and hearing from people in our community that are like, I'm going through this too, made me feel not alone, and made me feel I was so scared to take that medication. And you mentioned this, it's like, I was terrified. I thought that I was going to be different. I thought I was going to be a zombie. I thought I was going to change my personality. I was really worried I was going to gain weight because I had worked so hard.
Yeah, you were very
concerned. I was just so consumed with how this was going to negatively affect me. And you know what's so crazy is that was my anxiety.
I was to say your anxiety was giving you anxiety about the anxiety medication.
Not to take the anxiety medication, which is just crazy.
What
right?
If?
And that's how we get trapped. That's how we don't. That's how our wheels spin and spin and spin and spin.
Yeah.
And we're never able to make that step. So, the purpose of me sharing this is that I get it. I've been through it.
Yeah.
And I thought I was done with it. And your girl got walloped right in the face 12 years later. And I was like, dang, we really have to do this again. Yes. Cause clearly I didn't do enough. I didn't work through it enough. Or maybe I don't anticipate having those exact things happen now. I have the tools. I am still working now on recognizing the signs before the traumatic event takes me to a place. And that's constant work. I'm never going to be done doing that, but that's a different place than before. I thought I had dealt with it. I didn't want to deal with it anymore. Put it in this box, put it on the shelf, get it out of here. I'm fine. I don't need medication. I don't need, therapy. I don't need any of this stuff because I've worked through my traumas. Right. And that
naive, like you said,
is never ending. And even through my journey, I thought, man, I'm doing all these things and I'm working on myself.
Yeah.
And I was.
Yeah.
But there was more work to be done. And guess what? To be really honest, today, there's still more work to be done.
Yeah.
And this podcast is a giant part of that. Putting this in the world has made me look at my behaviors more while helping others, hopefully, right? That's the goal.
Yeah, that's the goal for this. Well, I left off in part 1, expressing that I had gotten on medication for anxiety. And I kind of mentioned that I stepped into like health and fitness world. So the health and fitness didn't come as a result of me looking for an answer to the anxiety. It was me looking for an answer to get healthy, because it was after my dad passed away that I realized that I needed to like shape up, and I don't mean physically like get in shape. I mean like stop eating the sugar
Like just
is
make a healthier choices.
make healthier choices.
Yeah.
And mostly for me, it was down to sugar. And the reason sugar was the big thing for me was because my dad died with cancer. And so, because of that, I did a lot of research and I learned a lot about sugar. So, I then decided that I needed to eat healthier. So, I started eating healthier. I started exercising. I started feeling better. I started losing weight. I felt really good. I, after exercising and eating well for about a year and a half, I decided that I didn't need anxiety medication anymore. I was healed. I was cured. I didn't have anxiety because now I took care of myself, right? This is what I was naive or I didn't know. I really thought that. I knew this because I went to, there was a time I couldn't go to a flippin' movie, let alone a concert. And here I was in Nashville, surrounded by tons of people. I'm talking thousands of people, and I wasn't panicking. And I was like, I'm good. So I stopped taking medication. And then about a year later, I was on a vacation, and I've shared this story. And on that vacation, after not having sugar, because I started doing low carb, high fat that year, it was 2017. I started meditating that year. So I was feeling really good. Meditation really helped me. Um, I had stopped the medication. I hadn't been on it for well over a year. I hadn't had any panic. So deep down, I thought, I am cured. I have no more anxiety. I had a Facebook group where I was talking about being an anxiety warrior. And at that point, I thought that meant that I was cured and I was done with it. And now I'm going to help everybody be done with anxiety. All you got to do is exercise and eat right. That's truly what I thought. And then September 2017, we get donuts. I ate a bunch of donuts. I ate a lot of donuts. I had not had sugar in a very long time. And when I say that, I mean, at that point, I was doing like 20 grams of sugar or less, or 25 added sugar or less, because I was still having bananas and, natural sugar and things like that. But here's the thing, I had a major panic attack for no reason. I was on the beach, a place that you're relaxed. I was with my family. There was nothing pressing. There was nothing that would have given me anxiety. Yet I had a full-fledged panic attack. That's the one I told that story where I ran up all the stairs and I wouldn't go in the elevator. Like I went backwards. I went totally backwards. And I'm not going to go into the whole story again, but I will just say that right there totally knocked me right off my feet. And I thought, I'm a fraud. I can't have this Facebook group anymore. I'm not cured of anxiety. I had a panic attack. And when you get a panic attack, the biggest thing you're concerned with is getting another panic attack, which can cause a panic attack. So it's this crazy, crazy thing. And if you have anxiety, and to the point where I'm talking, where you have a condition, where you have a disorder, where you have some, because like, again, everybody has anxiety. It's normal. That is a normal thing. But having it run your life, having it be something that is something you're obsessing about, always thinking about, something that you don't make decisions because you don't do something because of anxiety. So for 2018, I got to where I didn't want to leave my house anymore. I got to where I wouldn't go see my friend who had her baby in the hospital because I was so panicked. That one panic attack ruined me. And it is absolutely crazy how it did that, but it did. It absolutely ruined me. I went completely backwards. So fast forward, 2018, it's when I gained 20 pounds. I wasn't eating right anymore. I wasn't exercising. I wasn't eating terribly because I still was not wanting to have the sugar again. Because in my head, my dad, cancer, sugar, no, like that's as deep as it went. And I was like, I'm not having it. So I wasn't really, but I still was having, a Subway, things like that, which obviously was sugar, but it wasn't like the sugar I was having before with the donut. Anyway, I didn't quite understand all of it at that time. I just knew that I didn't want to partake in sugar. So I still gained 20 pounds because I was not living a healthy lifestyle. I was not exercising consistently. I was not watching how much I was eating. I wasn't, obviously in a calorie deficit, right? And then the end of 2018, I was like, I cannot believe I gained 20 pounds after the last few years of working so hard to lose weight. So I finally decided that I was going to try keto. I started keto March 2019. We've all heard this story. I'm not going to tell it all again. And for the 3 months before I started keto, I was trying to do the calorie deficit thing and I wasn't losing any weight. I started keto, started losing weight, started feeling really good, got into ketosis. It was amazing, but I still had anxiety. I was exercising. I wasn't having the sugar, but I still had anxiety. I was still overthinking things. I was still scared to go places and do things. It, you know, it didn't, I wasn't cured, right? The eating right, the exercising didn't cure me. So I went to see my gynecologist. And at this point, I have to tell you, I felt really good. I wasn't challenged very much because all of a sudden COVID happened. And then all of a sudden I didn't have to go anywhere. So it was pretty good for me because I didn't want to go anywhere because the anxiety had come back and kind of got a hold on me. 2019, even though I had anxiety, I didn't go back to the agoraphobia because I made sure I didn't go back there because that was something that I never want to experience again. So what I did, it's funny, what I did is I decided to have a garage sale. Like I had to make myself be with people because to be honest with you, I'd gotten for some reason afraid of people. How the mind can do things to you, I have no idea, but it can do things to you. But I knew, and what I have learned is you have to take responsibility yourself and do what you can do. So I knew I had to be around people. At this point in time, I had become a stay-at-home mom. I had stopped working in real estate. And I forgot to say that. I think that's very important here. Let me go back just for a second. Some of the things that I changed was exercise, diet. I slowed down. I started paying attention. I started being present. The meditation I expressed in 2017, that's when I stopped real estate that year. I stopped. We decided that I could stay home finally, which I desired desperately to do because I was exhausted as a realtor and I didn't want to keep living that life. I wanted to be home with my family. I was gone all weekends, all the time, and I hardly saw my husband. So I didn't want that for my life anymore. So we made some sacrifices. We went down to one car. We didn't get to take the vacations twice a year, but that was perfectly fine with us because we wanted me to be happy. We wanted me to be home. And it was good for Pete too, because he loved the idea of me being with our son at the time, who was just 2 or 3 years old, or 3 years old. It's 2017. He's 8 now, 4 years old. So I wanted to be home with him more and also homeschool. So there were things that we wanted to do. So it all worked out. And it really did contribute to peace for me. I started, like I said, meditation spiritually. That I was very healthy spiritually. I was very healthy physically, but I still had anxiety. So mentally, something was off. And I was doing everything right. So I couldn't understand why I had that panic attack, except that I had the sugar. So the sugar didn't cause the panic attack. I have to say this, and I said this when I told the story before, but I have to give this because I think it's important. The sugar gives you that rush or that rapid heartbeat, when you have a major sugar, what do they call it? Crush? I don't know what they call it, like a major sugar moment. Your body can react the way it would react with a panic attack. And that's what it did for me because my body wasn't used to it. So it really reacted. And I had the panic attack because of the feelings I was having. It produced a panic attack. Sugar didn't cause panic attack. The feelings I was having from the sugar caused that trigger of that same old feeling that I'd had a while back, and it caused that panic attack. So I needed to make that clear because it's scientific. It does not cause. Like I've done plenty of research to find out. I assure you, sugar doesn't cause a panic attack. So back to where I was. I have a point to that to say that I was present, meditating, eating properly, exercising, but I still had anxiety. So what was I missing? I was missing medication. And I say that because I am 100% sure that was the missing link for me, because I was still making myself function with the anxiety. Like I said, I had that garage sale because I needed to have strangers at my house so I could have faith in people again. Being on Instagram in 2019 with the keto community helped me to have faith in people again. I don't quite know what happened to me in 2018 to make me kind of like to people. Actually, I do know. I switched out of that group I was in. I had stopped, there was a lot of changes that had happened. And I guess maybe that's it. I don't quite know, to be honest with you, but in it wasn't until July, was it 2020? Yes, it was July 2020. I went to see my gynecologist to have my woman checkup and a mammogram. And he said to me, Molly, why are you not taking anxiety medication? I said, oh, I stopped taking that a long time ago, because he had prescribed it to me after or while I was pregnant. While I was pregnant, I wasn't taking any. And he said, why are you not taking it? Because I had 2 miscarriages, if you recall. And he said, why aren't you taking it? I said, because I stopped taking it because I was pregnant. He goes, honey, you need to take some anxiety medication for you, the baby, and your husband. It's like these doctors really can tell I have anxiety, whatever. So I went to see him, like I said, in July of 2020. And he said, why are you not taking anxiety medication? And I said, because I started exercising and I started like eating right and whatever. He's like, but do you feel like you're not having anxiety? I'm like, no, I have anxiety. He goes, yeah, you have anxiety. I'm like, okay. So he prescribed me the same medication again. And then I think I've told this story. I don't know. I then saw another doctor just a few months ago. And he actually upped my dose because he's like, you have anxiety. So it's a really weird thing. I'm a high strung person and I've always been. So it does make me wonder, have I always had anxiety and didn't know it? Because I remember as a waitress when I was 17, 18 years old, an old woman saying, are you okay? Are you nervous? And I was like, no. And then I used to have all kinds of caffeine too. So let's add on top of that. So, I mean, can you just be a high strung person or do you have anxiety? And I guess that's something I will put out as a question to people who maybe be very high strung, and they think they're just high strung. Perhaps you have anxiety. And like Ashley said before, if any of this resonates with you, if you can relate, like let's just say you are high strung and people say, oh, you're just high strung. And you tell yourself, oh, I'm just high strung. But deep down, you're not feeling comfortable and you overthink. And in private, you're having the panic attacks or you're overthinking and causing yourself to feel very uncomfortable in your bed at night.
Discomfort. Yeah.
Yes.
In any sort. Yeah.
Any sort. Maybe talk to somebody. Just evaluate, just see. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it doesn't mean you're weak. And it doesn't mean you don't have faith. And it doesn't mean anything except you have an imbalance inside. And this, your doctor helped you and said that about the helping hand.
Mm-hmm.
My husband helped me when I first went on medication all those years ago. He said, okay, Molly, if you had cancer, or I think he said cancer. He said, if you had cancer, and the doctor said, you need to take this, would you not take it or would you take it? I said, well, I would take it. He's like, okay, you have been told you have a chemical imbalance. The medication is going to help balance that. You can't do that on your own. You can't just balance it.
You've proven that you can't do it on your own.
I've proven that I can't.
Exactly.
So I am a huge believer that medication on its own is not going to help. Exercise on its own is not going to help. Eating properly, meaning healthy, cutting out sugar,
you have to have the Holy Trinity.
Exactly. Meditation is not going to help. Your Bible, and that's where I was too, years and years ago. I was like obsessing over God, thinking, let me help. And I know I don't want to be extreme there, but I did do that too, years, like in my 20s. That's back in my 20s. I tried everything. And I am telling you, it is a group of eating properly.
We joke it's the Holy Trinity, right?
Exercise. Yes. And it's being present. I think it's very, very vital. And it's a huge tip. When you're having an anxiety moment, if you're feeling that panic, look in front of you, pay attention to everything that's in front of you, be aware and be present. And that really will help you. And I practice being present when I practice my meditation and the anxiety medication. It's like all those together. Now
there's not just one thing.
There's not just one thing. There is not just one thing. And it took me a long time to figure that out, because you have to, like, if you take the medication and that's all you do, and it's just like a Band-Aid, that's all it is a Band-Aid. But underneath that Band-Aid, you got to work on yourself. Like, that Band-Aid is there and it's going to help while you're healing, but you have to do the internal work. You have to do the self-discovery, the self-awareness, the self-acceptance. You have to do the self-development while you're taking the medication. And that's probably the biggest thing that I would like to leave here in this podcast, because I had to learn it. And I tell you this, I think if we learn something, it is kind of our responsibility to tell other people. Even if people don't listen, that's up to them. But at least since I know, I feel like when I know, I share. And whoever wants to take it can take it or leave it, whatever. So that's it. I'm not going to go on any longer, because that's pretty much how I was able to not conquer anxiety.
Yeah.
But I will say it's the way that I'm able to not allow anxiety to run my life. I am not imprisoned in anxiety anymore.
You run your life and you deal with your anxiety. It's, it's always kind of, if anybody's watched the show Dexter, Dark Passenger, we all have, right, a dark passenger, right? There's always a part, or there's usually something in our lives that we've had to deal with, something we've had to overcome, something we have or have not worked through. Every human experiences anxiety. It's very natural. It's actually part of what keeps us safe. It is part of our nature to be warned from danger. It is fear is a natural process there for us to protect ourselves.
Right.
So we have to exist with it, right? But it's supposed to be appropriate for the situation.
The irrational fear is
and
not.
when it instead becomes an appropriate reaction to a situation, and it becomes a default mode or reaction to everything.
Right.
We must look at how much it's consuming our time and our effort and our energy. And if it is keeping us from living a truly full life, or keeping us from making choices, or feeling stuck, or creating depression, because they often live in the same home together, we have to look at that deeper. And you're right. Just getting on medication is not enough. That's just a Band-Aid. And like my doctor said, that is just going to take this severe feeling down so that you can work through it. Because you still have to work through it. The trauma and the issues, they're still there. We're just giving you a place to do it without all of that emotion being so raw. That flesh is ripped open when you're going through it. And this does close some of that wound so that you can go, okay, let's put the cards on the table. What is really happening here? Why is this happening?
Well, that also, and you and I've said this to each other, it's like the medication helps us to be who we actually are.
Yeah, which is so be opposite of what we tell ourselves before we're on medication.
Right. And I will add this as well, as you say that, I can honestly for sure 100% say that I have not had depression since the mid 2000s. So it's interesting, because I know back then I was in a state of depression because I was thinking, I wish I had done this, or
regret,
guilt, so much regret. And like, I haven't had any regret. I just have the what if, and that's the anxiety. It's like looking to, you heard this before,
20
anxiety, you're looking in the future. Depression is because you're looking in the past. The best place to be is the present. Be in the present, because neither of those
do anything.
places.
You can't change those things. You can't change what hasn't happened,
and you
can't
don't
change
know
what
what's
already
gonna
has.
right. You can't.
Right.
And we'll drive
get
ourselves
stuck on that
crazy. Try.
And that's what we do. And that's how you end up in a hole. And
right.
You can sort through your past without getting stuck back there. You can hope for your future without getting hung up on every detail that might happen.
You have to look back to the past to be able to move forward. That is definitely a truth. You have to face the truth of the past, but you don't. I know it's like, for me, it was just like, gosh, if I had only oh, if only that.
Yeah, you can't
Oh,
live
if
there.
what if I had done? Like that's that
Yeah,
whole,
you can't
that's
live
not what I'm
there.
talking about. I'm talking like facing, you know, that's what I'm talking about where the depression came. But just like looking back and going, wow, this happened.
Wow, I could have made different choices. Wow, that really, you know what?
That's
That really
learn
had an
from.
impact on
Yeah.
me. How
Yeah.
did that make
That's
me
different.
feel? That's
Yeah.
called
That's different.
reflection on your
Right.
past, right?
Right. That's a whole
Using your
different thing.
past to understand and educate you on why you make choices and why you do
Right.
what you do is a sign of healing. When we start
Yes.
to question that, we want to seek the answers. If we're not doing that, are we actually trying to heal?
Right. Because are you not going to move forward? You got to move
You
forward.
can't,
You
because
can't
you're not
stay stuck. You
acknowledging
get
that there
stuck.
was things
Right.
that have happened and things you need to work on.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times we're not experiencing emotions that we are hiding, and anxiety lives in that,
Oh,
and
yeah.
really, really, really grows in that.
Mhm.
Denying yourself that
Yeah.
ability to heal and work on yourself. So
Yeah. Well, we're going to finish, we're going to wrap this episode up. But if any of this, you know, anything we've talked about has touched you in a certain way where you're like, wow, maybe I need to talk to somebody, we encourage you to do so. Talk to somebody. We're just
we're
sharing
not
our
doctors.
experiences.
Yeah.
We're not doctors. We're not therapists. We're none of that stuff. We're sharing our own experience of our mental health journey, I guess you would call it. But we highly recommend you speak to some professional about it. Definitely.
If
So
you have concerns, for
if you have
sure.
concerns, absolutely. But we thank y'all so much for letting us share this part of us with you because, you know, we're more than just keto. So we like to talk about it all.
It's all connected, as we said. Anyway, it all has
is.
a place here.
It is. It's all together. So thank y'all so much. And we will see you on the next episode.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. You can find and connect with us over on Instagram at More Than Just Keto. Don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss out on the fun. We'll see you next time.